Listen, in the gridlock that defines Washington, many people believe, or at least some people believe, if there's anything that can get through Washington now that's got a chance of a significant issue of passing, it just might be immigration reform. Both parties want it for different reasons here, but at the end of the day, if they look to the public, they'll see there's a lot of support. 63% of Americans are in favor of citizenship or a pathway to it. And you have 14% of Americans in favor of permanent legal residence. To that end, the president, this is one of the few notable policy issues he talked about on Tuesday.
Finally, if we're serious about economic growth, it is time to heed the call of business leaders, labor leaders, faith leaders, law enforcement, and fix our broken immigration system. When people come here to fulfill their dreams, to study, invent, contribute to our culture, they make our country a more attractive place for businesses to locate and create jobs for everybody. So let's get immigration reform done this year.
And here to talk more about this is Mei Ngai. Mei is professor of history and Asian American studies at Columbia University and author of Impossible Subjects, Illegal Aliens, and the Making of Modern America. Ms. Ngai, thank you so much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as many people may recognize in today's paper, you recently wrote a piece in the Times, Second-Class Non-Citizens, in which you say that citizenship shouldn't be held hostage to narrow, defeatist, and racially discriminatory partisan interests.
Right.
I don't have to guess you're not too crazy about the recent GOP plan. What do you find most problematic about it? And you talk about history in this same article, and I know in your book as well. Maybe you can use that as context.
Well, this problem we have today of 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States is a big problem, but it's not the first time we faced it. Ever since the 1920s, the United States has had the problem of people who come here unlawfully. And over the decades of the 20th century, we have periodically legalized the undocumented, and we've always paired that with giving them green cards, that is, a path to citizenship. So I think that's a good precedent, and it's something that we should continue to follow today. It promotes full inclusion, it promotes a society of political equals, and it guarantees that people who come here to live and work will have a voice in their communities.
And you go through different chapters in history. I think many may be surprised that in the 30s and 40s, you had Europeans and Canadians that were coming over the border illegally into the States, and we made them citizens down the road. And even when there were more punitive measures, like in the 50s, the postscript was we made them legal as well. And people may forget, even Ronald Reagan in the 80s made nearly 3 million people that were illegal aliens, gave them a path to citizenship as well. So we're not talking about something without precedent here, right?
Exactly. And I think the reason why we've done this over the years is because Congress recognizes that even though people come here unlawfully, it actually is not possible to completely seal the border. You know, we've been trying that for the last generation. We've put $20 billion on the border, and it has reduced unlawful entries, but you cannot stop it completely. So if people do end up coming here, and they come here to work, they come here to raise families, they become part of our communities, at some point you have to make an adjustment, and you have to say, these people are part of our society, and they should not have to live in the shadows forever.
The premise is the best person you're going to have is a person who's fully committed to the country. And if there's a disincentive for them to have a complete buy-in to what is American, to be an American in every sense of the word, then you're not going to have a complete American citizen regardless, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Now, you talked before, people aren't using the language, let's be clear, but you don't have to read too much between the lines here to see some of the objection is that you have a Latino population that's trying to become American citizens. They're trying to go through this. We've seen this before, and as you talked about in your book and also in today's editorial, we saw this with the Chinese. It was more overt, granted, back then, but we have singled out different populations over the years, and it's always been followed with an apology, maybe a generation or two later, but it's always something we look back with regret on.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chinese have the dubious distinction of being the only group to be singled out by name as undesirable as immigrants to the United States. And during the Chinese exclusion period, the people that were excluded were mostly laborers. If you were a merchant or a professional, you could come in, but you couldn't become a citizen. So we had a situation very much like what is being proposed today, where there's a legal status but a bar against being a full member of society. And this really served to marginalize people. And in the Western states, there are many jobs that you couldn't have if you weren't a citizen, and you also couldn't own farmland if you weren't a citizen. So this was a deeply discriminatory system. It was openly racist, and actually in 2012, Congress issued a statement of regret. It's not a formal apology, but it was a statement of regret, which is as far as they could go, saying that that was wrong, and I don't think we should repeat the same error again.
And finally, May, the math of this, I've seen a lot of studies, and I know you've obviously studied this extensively, that says, hey, if you get them to pay in, if you get them to pay the back taxes, if you have them fully functioning and they have to go through the other hurdles of the language and be, fully basically embedded in the society, we make more money than lose money as a country. It's a win-win, right? It
should be, right? It's a win-win. I think the problem here is that, even with the undocumented, the political opposition is mostly concerned about Latinos, and people can draw whatever conclusions they want from that. But people aren't jumping up and down about the undocumented immigrants from Poland or Russia or Ireland. It's all about the Latinos. And I think that there's a kind of irrational and, frankly, a racist fear about too many brown people in this country, and they don't want to see those people have the vote. But America has always changed in its composition. It doesn't stay the same, and people who come here as immigrants to work and raise families should be accepted as part of our society. People shouldn't be afraid of their votes. They should try to convince them to support them. Well, we can be sure that it will be a debate here that will take place not just in Washington, but on the campaign trail in this midterm election season. Professor, I appreciate it. And again, the book is Impossible Subjects, Illegal Aliens and the Making of Modern America. Mei Ngai, thank you very much. Thank you, Rich.
Could have been brought out earlier.
All right. When we come back, the question is, will he or won't he? And if you want to be a little tougher than that, does it matter? Donald Trump says he will not get into the race for New York governor if Rob Astorino does. But tonight we're asking the question, can either one of them give Andrew Cuomo a realistic run for his money? And just how bad is the challenge before the Grand Old Party when it comes to statewide elections in New York? We'll talk about that after this.